Are we set to have a normal year in 2021? I should say, quote unquote, normal year. Last year's season provided teams with a new form of adversity, something that we hadn't seen before, obviously, and something that pushed them to really adapt to the times. COVID really forced everyone to figure things out on a daily basis and sometimes affected multiple weeks worth of games. So, with the developments in the world and everything that's going on, teams are hoping that this year is a little bit more normal. Speaking of normal, Alabama got back to its own normal by winning a national championship. Shocker. They lose a bunch of key pieces, but they're also Alabama, so they're going to reload. The usual cast of characters are going to join them: Oklahoma, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, blah, 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 blah. The same guys every single year, but they have different people leading the way. The Buckeyes and the Tigers join Alabama with the task of finding a new quarterback, but there are multiple options for each and guys who really benefit from NIL. I think Alabama's Bryce Young just was quoted as saying Nick Saban said he has deals that are worth almost seven figures, which is just nuts. But we'll get into that at another day. Who will be the surprise team in the country? Indiana stunned everyone by beating Penn State to start 2020, and the Hoosiers will be a contender in the Big Ten once again. Iowa State returns nearly every single player on their two-deep depth chart on both sides of the ball, but have to find a way to overthrow Oklahoma this year. Pac-12 hopes things end better for them. Oregon is back to sitting at the top of the conference and is their best hope right now. USC could be a team that gives them a chance too. And Arizona State, depending on what happens off the field, might be the bigger sleeper team in the country. At the group of five level, Cincinnati is ready to prove it can compete with the big dogs. They have a couple big games coming up that will prove if they're able to handle the pressure and if they can compete again. They hung out with Georgia for a while. They went down to the wire, lost on a last-second field goal in the Peach Bowl, and they returned a ton of talent from last year's team. Boise State and UCF are under new eras with Andy Avalos and Gus Malzahn, respectively, and they're hoping to get back to the top of the group of five. Liberty is not a group of five team, but they fit that mold being an underdog. They can make a serious run at an undefeated season, and their quarterback can make a serious run at a Heisman Trophy. Other teams that have questions that will need to be addressed, but they have top 25 potential. What will Texas look like under Steve Sarkisian? Can Ole Miss be a competitor in the second year of Lane Kiffin? What does losing Kyle Trask do to Florida and Dan Mullen? Will Miami be able to compete with Alabama in week one and Clemson in the entire season? Is that Orgeron on the hot seat? There's so many questions that we have for every single team, and it's just time to dive right in and get right to the top 25 teams for the college football season in 2021. At number 25, we have those LSU Tigers. Orgeron returns a ton of talent, and honestly, I don't think we talked about the explosive potential this offense had with Miles Brennan running the show. He got hurt, lost him for the season, and now he's battling with Max Johnson for the starting job. I think Brennan is the guy that will win the job. He's more experienced. I think he brought the offense to a higher level than Johnson did, and Johnson will just be the future. Keishawn Butte is one of the best wide receivers in the country. He is back. Running backs Tyrion Davis-Price and John Emery Jr. showed potential running the ball, so the offense will still be fun to watch. Defensively, they got another transfer at linebacker in Clemson Tigers, Mike Jones Jr. At cornerback, Derek Stingley and Eli Ricks will be two of the best corners on their own, but they'll give them the best duo in the entire nation. This is a team with a ton of talent on both sides of the ball. They obviously weren't going to have another national championship one last year, but it's time to move on from that and change how things go in 2021. Number 24 is the Boise State Broncos. Andy Avalos takes over a program that hopes to get back to running the Mountain West, at least competing for a title. And he has an offense that was surprisingly explosive last year. He just needs Hank Bachmeier to stay healthy. He needs George Holani to stay healthy. Lucky for them, they both have guys behind them that can step up. Jack Steers stepped up for Hank Bachmeier, and the Broncos have two other running backs this year that can step up if Holani is not 100%. At wide receiver, Khalil Shakir and C.T. Thomas are back, and they can ball out. This is going to be another exciting offense to watch, and the offensive line also has talent returning. Linebacker Riley Wimpy used an extra year of eligibility to return. And there's a ton of guys on this defense that will also make them a contender in the Mountain West this year. At number 23, the UCF Knights. We mentioned Gus Malzahn taking over for a team that went 6-4. Somehow got Josh Heupel the Tennessee job, and it's probably good that both sides moved on. Malzahn inherits Dylan Gabriel, one of the best quarterbacks in college football. The Hawaii native has already thrown for over 7,000 yards and 61 touchdowns in his career, and he's just going to add to those numbers. He needs to figure out how he's going to work with Malzahn. He's already doing that in the offseason, and how they're going to find a way to utilize Gabriel's talents in Malzahn's offense. But with guys like Ryan O'Keefe and Jalen Robinson back, there should be no problems throwing the football. The defense needs to step up. It was a very young defense last year, but they have the potential to change things this year. The defensive line will be one of the best in the conference. Big Cat Bryan comes in from Auburn. Cam Good's going to be a stud. Kalia Davis comes back after sitting out last year. And there's a ton of talent that was young in 2020 that will be experienced this season. At number 22, we have the Washington Huskies. Finished 3-1 last year. Technically won the Pac-12 North, but because of COVID wasn't able to play in the conference championship game. So a four-game sample doesn't really give us enough to know what kind of team Washington was in 2021 or what they were going to be, but we had some intriguing options, intriguing players to watch. Quarterback Dylan Morris had some moments last year, but he needs to find pass catchers out of tight end Cade Otton. They need to find more reliable players that can help him out this year and improve his consistency. Center Luke Wattenberg and tackle Jackson Kirkland are back to lead an experienced offensive line. Really where things get extremely interesting is on the defensive side of the ball, and good interesting that is. Linebacker or edge player Ryan Bowman returns as a super senior and leads the talented defense this year. They have a few other guys that are going to be extremely exciting at linebacker and on the defensive line as well. On the backside, even though Elijah Molden and Keith Taylor are gone, they return Trent McDuffie, Kyler Gordon, Asa Turner are all back. McDuffie is one of the best cornerbacks in college football. He's going to be very exciting to watch. Washington, under Jimmy Lake, we didn't really get to see what they were, and it's going to be fun to see what they can put together in 2021. They have a lot of nice pieces, a lot of exciting pieces, especially on defense. This is going to be another elite defense for the Huskies, and it's just a matter of can the offense be explosive enough to win football games. At number 21, we have the Iowa Hawkeyes. Finished 6-2 last year, and we're going to see another Iowa team that exceeds expectations. It's not going to be a surprise if they do. 3 starters on the offensive line need to be replaced, and this was a group that was great at running the football, so that becomes even more vital to their success. Running back Tyler Goodson is back after rushing for 762 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. Tight end Sam Laporta is set to be the next great Hawkeyes tight end and could become quarterback Spencer Petras' go-to target with Emir Smith-Marset leaving. Petras plays a big role in here. Again, quarterback's always going to be a key for this Iowa team. They're going to be able to run the football. It's just a matter of can they be effective enough throwing it. Another staple of Iowa's success is a tough defense, and they'll do that without 3 players on the defensive line. Defensive end Zach Van Valkenburg returns, but he needs to find 3 other pals, buddies, whatever you want, teammates that are going to step up. Cornerback Riley Moss and safety Jack Horner return after picking off a combined 5 passes. And honestly, it's really not great to count Iowa out anywhere at any point during the season, and that's going to be true again in 2021. Number 20, we have the Ole Miss Rebels. Finished 5-5 last year, but man, were they one of the most exciting teams to watch in college football. Lane Kiffin, in one season, already showed that he can make an impact in college football's best conference. He elevated Matt Corral into a 70% passer. That is probably his greatest achievement from last year. And he helped lead the Rebels to the 14th best scoring offense in the entire country. Jerrion Ealy, Snoop Connor, and Henry Parrish Jr. give Ole Miss a deep running group, and the pass catchers might have need to find a way to replace Elijah Moore. Maybe they'll do that by committee. That's most likely they're gonna do. The Ontario Drummond, Jonathan Mingo, and Braylon Sanders all return after combined for almost 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns. And again, they're just gonna have to step up, and maybe they'll all be great, but I don't know if any of them have Moore's potential this year. While the Rebels could score last year, they also struggled keeping teams off the scoreboard. So Kiffin's got to figure out a way to slow teams down because his team could score, but if they have trouble in that area at any point, it's going to be tough for them to win a ton of games. Number 19, the Arizona State Sun Devils finished 2-2 last year, a team that kind of felt like we got robbed out of scene because they only played 4 games, and now a team that's going through some stuff off the field, hosting recruits during COVID times when they weren't allowed to have people on campus, that kind of stuff. They probably have some sanctions coming up. It's just a matter of when those actually come through. For now, we're just going to act like they're okay for this year, and that means that we get to watch Jaden Daniels, who has NFL potential. He just needs to find a go-to receiver. Running back Rashad White averaged 10 yards a carry. That's just absolutely insane. He's back, and he also averaged 18.9 yards per reception. So if you want to find a dynamic player, Arizona State has that in their backfield. Maybe you can make an argument that he's the most dynamic running back in the entire country. Guard Donovan West is a nasty player who can set the tone. Doesn't really get enough love on the offensive line, and again, this offense is going to be extremely fun to watch. Arizona State's defense will be one of the better defenses in the country too. Defensive tackle Jermaine Lowell is highly underrated up the middle. Merlin Robinson has a future as a linebacker or even on the edge in the NFL. Cornerbacks Jack Jones and Chase Lucas are super underrated and deserve more love. And honestly, this is an underrated team with a ton of underrated players that could shock many teams this year if, the off the field stuff doesn't get in the way. Number 18 is the Florida Gators, finished 8-4, made the SEC championship last year. Dan Mullen really strayed from his norm by opening up the passing attack last year with Kyle Trask. He'll get back to more of a normal approach with Emory Jones running the show. Running the football was a struggle, so that's the biggest thing that this team needs to address, and they'll probably do that with Jones because he's a better runner right now than he is a passer. But it'll be interesting to see how Mullen's able to develop him this year. If they do need to pass, Jacob Copeland, Justin Shorter, and Xavier Henderson all return, so it's not like they're hurting for pass catchers. Even though they lose Kadarius Toney and Trayvon Grimes and Kyle Pitts. The defense lost 4 defensive backs, but that group will still be great. They'll be playing more man coverage this year thanks to the speed that they have returning. So that's that's a high praise for some of the guys they have back. Trey Dean is back at safety. Kaiir Elam has a future in the NFL and is going to be one of the best corners in the entire country. So passing on the Gators won't be easy, even though they lost 4 great defensive backs. Many believe the defensive line is going to be loaded. Zachary Carter returns. I'm not even going to get into that many names because they're so good on that defensive line. So with the offense finding a new identity, maybe it'll be the defense that needs to carry them early. But this is still a loaded team that right now has some questions, which is why they're this low. But this is definitely a team that can move their way into the top 10 when the season's all said and done. Number 17, Oklahoma State Cowboys. Finished 8-3 last year, and expectations are back down. After a year where they failed to live up to the expectations that people had for them, and picked them to go to the college football playoff, they're going to have to find a way to deal with the disappointment from last year and move on. Now, expectations are a little lower, which is probably where they thrive a little bit more, and they'll have to do that without some key pieces. Tylan Wallace, Tevin Jenkins, and Chuba Hubbard are gone, but they're honestly reloading. L.D. Brown and Desmond Jackson will replace Hubbard. Brendan Presley shows some flashes and can be the replacement for Tylan Wallace. And quarterback Spencer Sanders is going to be the one orchestrating the entire offense. If you can find some consistency as a passer, watch out for this team. Linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez decided to come back along with Kobe Harville-Peel and Trey Sterling on the backside. And this is a defense that really led the way for Oklahoma State. They were actually a good defense. So now that they're back to being underdogs, that could make them a dangerous team. And there's a lot to like on both sides of the football. Number 16 is the Texas Longhorns at 7-3 last year. And even though Sam Ehlinger is gone, there are some exciting options between Casey Thompson and Hudson Card, a quarterback battle that we'll be watching well into the fall camp and maybe even into the season. Steve Sarkisian has a tough job to pick between those two. Thompson has the experience. Card is another exciting player coming in as a highly touted recruit. But they'll have the luxury of handing the ball off to Bijan Robinson, who's one of the hottest players towards the end of the season. I don't think that we didn't talk about Bijan Robinson multiple times a week at the end of the year last year. Wide receiver Joshua Moore is back after a big year, showed some big play potential, and that's something that Sarkisian will figure out how to use. And even though that they lose Ehlinger, this is still an offense that should be fun to watch, honestly. On the other side of the ball, linebacker Jamarvian Overshown and BJ Foster are back to lead the defense. This is a group that was fairly average last year, so picking up the pace and picking up their play will be a key to have them being competitive in the Big 12. At number 15, we have the Wisconsin Badgers, another team that started out hot and then kind of hit the concrete hard, hit the field hard, face planted, whatever you want to call it. In just 2 games, the excitement surrounding Wisconsin's offense reached an all-time high. Graham Mertz was a Heisman candidate, and people were talking about Wisconsin as this new era. 3 straight losses killed the buzz. They just scored 20 points in those 3 games, and all that was kind of gone. Graham Mertz does have the potential to open up the offense, and running back Jalen Berger could be the next great Badgers running back after averaging 5 yards per carry last year. Linebacker Jack Sanborn returns to lead after leading the team in tackles. Safeties Scott Nelson and Colin Wilder are back, and they're playmakers who are also very good at making an impact on the defense. And honestly, back to the offense, if the Badgers can find a way to get Danny Davis and the other wide receivers the ball in space, maybe even tight end Jake Ferguson a little bit more, the offense could really take off. The Badgers are the kings of the Big Ten West. Usually, obviously, Northwestern won it last year. They're back to try and retain or return to the top of the West and maybe even add a conference championship while they're at it, if that's possible. Number 14, we have the USC Trojans. Went 5-1 last year, lost the Pac-12 championship game to Oregon. It's a big year for USC and head coach Clay Elton. After they made the conference championship game, they fell short to Oregon, like I said, and then they didn't play in a bowl game for COVID reasons. Even after all that, fans were still disappointed and now are expecting even more. Keaton Slovis has a future playing on Sundays, and despite losing 2 of his top targets, he gets back both Drake London and Brew McCoy. Gary Bryant Jr. is back. He also added Memphis transfer, or I should say, Helton added Memphis transfer Taj Washington, tight end from Texas in Malcolm Epps, and another Texas wide receiver in Jake Smith. Defense is loaded with athleticism. Drake Jackson is a versatile player that Todd Orlando is going to love anywhere he puts him on the field, whether it's rushing the passer or backing up to defend the pass, covering a wide receiver or a tight end. Cornerback Chris Steele is an underrated player who doesn't get a lot of love. And honestly, back to Jackson and then the defensive line, they're going to be one of the best in the entire country. So watch out for them. USC obviously is not happy with where Helton is bringing them. I think that they're headed in the right direction. So winning a conference championship probably eases a lot of that frustration. Number 13, the Liberty Flames finished 10-1 last year. Like I said, Hugh Freeze is doing a phenomenal job, and Malik Willis is one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. a team that averaged 38.2 points per game, thanks to Willis mostly. Could be even better this year, and then their defense also has some potential. Defensive ends Jarrell Johnson and Trayshawn Clark are very, very explosive. They combined for 20.5 tackles for loss and 14 sacks, so they're one of the best combinations in the entire country, and there's probably not many games that they won't be favored in outside of the road trip to Ole Miss. Number 12 is the Indiana Hoosiers, with Michael Penix returning, a team that went 6-2 last year could be just as good or maybe even a little bit better. They have a lot of potential. There's some pieces that they'll need to fill. Anyone who predicted the Hoosiers doing what they did last year probably made a ton of money. Penix got the season off to a great start with his phenomenal play to stun Penn State, and now they're looking to repeat that success. Penix is back, and he gets his top target in Ty Freifogel back, along with tight end Peyton Hendershot. A new running back is needed now that Stevie Scott is gone, but they add USC transfer Stephen Carr, and the offensive line should be solid to help them get Carr up to speed and having a good year. On the other side of the ball, Tywan Mullen is a rising star who's set to have another big year after he did in 2020. Linebacker Micah McFadden led the team in tackles for loss and was very productive. 59 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 2 interceptions. On the other side of Mullen, Jalen Williams led the team with 4 picks. So this is going to be another great defense. Tom Allen has this team running on all cylinders, and it's just firing great. A team that's very, very explosive at times and has a defense that can compete with a lot of teams. They're not going to sneak up on anybody this year, but they're still a team that people have to worry about on a weekly basis. Number 11 is the Oregon Ducks. Didn't win their division, but somehow found a way to win the conference. Finished 4-3 last year. So, like I said, how good were they? They didn't win their division, still won the conference. That's just obviously COVID affected this. So after Washington had COVID issues, the Oregon Ducks took their place because they couldn't play, and then they upset USC for the crown. If they want to repeat as champs, they'll need to do it with a new quarterback, as Tyler Shuck transferred to Texas Tech. Running back CJ Verdell is looking to bounce back, along with Travis Dye. And Oregon honestly has a ton of potential at wide receiver. Mainly Devin Williams is the big name we're going to be talking about. 19.1 yards per catch, 6'5", 205 pounds, a guy who's going to be a stud, honestly. And it's going to be exciting to see where this passing attack goes. I think Anthony Brown is going to be the starter. Maybe a freshman takes over for him, but I think Brown, who I predicted last year was going to be the better quarterback between him and Shuck. A lot of people picked Shuck, and that proved not to be true. Brown has really had the better year towards the end of the season, and it just took people a little while to realize that. If he's able to play at a high level, this offense is going to be really exciting to watch. Honestly, though, the most interesting thing about Oregon is that they've suddenly become a team that relies more on defense. Linebacker Noah Sewell had a phenomenal freshman year. Defensive end Kayvon Thibodeau is an absolute stud. He and Sewell are going to be monsters, and they have some talent coming in that could also compete for starting spots as freshmen. Cornerback Mikael Wright, future NFL player, a guy who has a lot of potential and can be a shutdown corner for this guy. For this team, I should say. Mario Cristobal has so much to look forward to this year, and they can make a big statement with a win over Ohio State early on. If they're able to do that, Oregon quickly rises up into the top 10, and this could be a good thing for the Pac-12 to kind of ease any of those concerns about not making the playoff for a little while here. At number 10, we have the Cincinnati Bearcats, team that finished 9-1 and won the AAC last year. Luke Fickell continues year in and year out to turn down Power 5 jobs. We don't know if he's staying in Cincinnati for the long run or if he's waiting for the right job to come around. But for now, he's still at Cincinnati. He's won 31 games in his last 3 years, including 2 AAC championship appearances with 1 actual championship. Desmond Ridder plays a big role in that, in getting them back there, and he just needs to stay healthy with nobody behind them with any relevant experience. The defense is absolutely loaded. Ahmad Garner is a future NFLer. Kobe Bryant has a great name and also has a future in the NFL, and there's just a ton of guys around them that are going to be absolutely scary as well. This is a great unit, even though Marcus Freeman moved on, the defensive coordinator moved to Notre Dame. This is still a team that's going to be stout defensively. It's going to be one of the best defenses in the country. And speaking of Notre Dame, the Bearcats do face Notre Dame on September 28th. They also face Indiana, and that's, I believe, in week 2. If there's ever a team that's going to push for a top 4 spot in the college football playoff, this probably would be the year. 2016 Houston had the potential to do that as well, but obviously that didn't happen. Honestly, if Cincinnati beats Notre Dame and Indiana, they still need those teams to be really, really good because that strengthens their resume. If Indiana turns out to be a 6-6 team, like many are predicting, and say Notre Dame finishes like 8-4 or 9-3, doesn't look as good, but I mean, still, it's a step in the right direction for this conference, and 2 wins would be very exciting to talk about if they're able to pull those off. Number 9, Texas A&M Aggies finished 9-1 last year, and Jimbo Fisher's team really felt snubbed from the college football playoff, and that provides them with enough motivation to just dominate in 2021. While they need to find a replacement for Kellen Mond, the offense should be just fine when they rely on Isaiah Spiller to run the football. Kenyon Green is the only starter returning on the offensive line, so they need to find new guys there, but they should be just fine. The new quarterback will have to throw to some receivers that also need to step up. So more questions are on the offensive side of the ball than the defense. The defense is really where they're going to thrive. Leading tackler Buddy Johnson is gone, along with defensive tackle Bobby Brown. So they'll have to find people to replace them. But DeMarvin Leal at defensive end is an absolute star. Safeties Leon O'Neal and Damani Richardson both are back, and they're studs. Cornerback Miles Jones is returning, a 6'4" corner for the Aggies, and a rising star at the other cornerback spot in Jalen Jones is also back. This team might be motivated, but they need to find something that's going to work at passing attack for the offense. Fisher has some work to do with his quarterbacks, and he needs to find a way to get his receivers to step up. This is definitely a potential playoff team. It's just a matter of can they put it all together, and that includes the passing attack, which is very vital this year. Number 8, the Miami Hurricanes finished 8-3 last year, and everyone's really pointing to the Week 1 game against Alabama, but we have to get there first. And the one thing that they're more worried about right now is the health of D.R. King, the quarterback who came in from Houston last year, tore his ACL in the bowl game, and his rehab is the biggest topic of conversation when you also bring up Week 1 against Alabama. A healthy King might not push them over the top against Bama, but it certainly helps a ton. If they don't have him, there's no chance they win the game. He's joined in the backfield by Cameron Harris, who was the starter last year, but there's also guys that will get plenty of touches. Jalen Knighton is another one, and there's a few other guys that are going to get some touches, maybe even steal Harris's spot this year. They get back 4 of their top 5 pass catchers, and honestly, drops really have to go down. Miami's receivers dropped a ton of passes in 2020, and that has to stop. Brevin Jordan is gone, so they need another go-to guy. Will Mallory at tight end could be that. He's the replacement for Jordan, but he could also be the reliable threat that King needs. On defense, safeties Bubba Bolden and Amari Carter are both back, but there's competition for both of them. Bolden will probably be a starter, but Carter has to worry about his job. Georgia transfer Tyreek Stevenson had a solid spring and should help the secondary. Linebacker Zach McLeod has been rumored to move to defensive end, so he'll help out on the edge. So that means a new linebacker has to step up. Manny Diaz is a really exciting team, and right now the biggest question is, can they beat Bama? Are they good enough to beat Alabama in Week 1? We're going to know quickly, especially with King's rehab, but this is still a very interesting team, a team that could be very, very exciting in 2021 in the ACC and in the entire country. Number 7, the North Carolina Tar Heels finished 8-4 last year, and the basketball school quickly is turning into a football school under Mac Brown. His hire of Phil Longo is one of the best hires we've seen in college football in the last few years. He's turned the offense into a powerhouse, and they get back quarterback Sam Howell, who returns to lead it once again after starting for the last 2 years. While they lose four of their biggest starters, their two top running backs, and their two top wide receivers, there's a lot of talent returning. Coffrey Brown is back after averaging 22.5 yards per catch. Josh Downs is a future star. Everyone's picking him to be the next great wide receiver. And Bo Corrales is back to lead that group. Tight end Garrett Walston is another solid option and also is a good blocker. Defense needs to figure out who's going to be their leader with Chad Surratt gone, but the Fox brothers, Toman and Tamari, are back after combining for 16.5 tackles for loss and 11 sacks last year. Tony Grimes is a rising star in the secondary and honestly could have been playing high school football last year, but he was playing for the Tar Heels. This defense should be a lot better, especially with the offense needing to find new playmakers. North Carolina is still a dangerous team. They just need to figure a couple things out, but this is a team that could very well contend in the ACC. Number 6, Iowa State Cyclones finished 9-3 last year. And honestly, it's now or never for this team. Some people say last year was their window, but with everybody they have returning, which is nearly everyone on their two deep, it's time for them to buckle up and make an actual run. This is the most talent you're ever going to see returning to Ames, and they finally got a taste of what it's like to be one of the favorites last year, and that experience could help them overthrow Oklahoma in the Big 12. Brock Purdy took a step backwards last year, but he can still sling it. I think that there were some things leading to that. He needs some help in terms of getting some explosive players to step up at wide receiver, but there's a ton of talent available to him. Running back Breece Hall is one of the best, actually the best running back in the country. Led all backs with over 1,500 yards and 21 touchdowns, and this will be his final season as he's going to turn pro, most likely, barring anything unforeseen coming up. Tight end Charlie Kohler turned down the NFL for one more run in college, and wide receiver Xavier Hutchinson could be a all Big 12 player again this year. Linebacker Mike Rose and his 215 career tackles are back to lead a defense that's loaded. Rose had his best year, and he will do literally whatever the coaching staff asks him to do. He's versatile. He can make plays anywhere on the field, and he's going to do that again this year. And there's some linebackers returning as well that will help him. Greg Eisworth also came back to lead the secondary. Will McDonald's going to be a stud at defensive end. And this team's capable of making a run at the Big 12 title, and that also could mean a college football playoff run as well. At number 5, we have the Ohio State Buckeyes. Finished 7-1 last year and lost the national championship game to Alabama. Ryan Day continues to prove that he can coach just as good as anyone. He led like I said, they led the Buckeyes to another college football playoff experience, another national championship experience. Now his new challenge is to replace Justin Fields, who's off to the NFL and the Chicago Bears. But the winner really doesn't have to do a ton for this team. Many think C.J. Stroud is going to be that guy, so it'll be interesting to see what he's able to do. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson give the Buckeyes two of the best receivers in all of college football. Tight end Jeremy Ruckert will also be back and could have a big year. Up front there, Munford returns to lead this group. Harry Miller is going to be another guy to watch. It's just there's so much talent on this team that it's not even funny. The quarterback really doesn't have to do that much. Master T could be the running back, but incoming freshman Travion Henderson is being picked to be the starter there. So that'll be fun to watch as well. So maybe we can have all freshman backfield for Ohio State. Defense is no different, really. Haskell Garrett is back. Tyreek Smith and Zach Harrison will bookend him and one other guy on the inside at defensive end. Smith and Harrison are menaces out on the edge, so that's going to be fun to watch. The secondary will need to step up a little bit because the Buckeyes need 4 new linebackers. Even with the holes that they have to fill, Day's proven that he can bring in the talent to do that, and he's proven that nothing really will change in 2021. This is still a playoff contention team, and this is a team that's going to be a favorite in the Big Ten for sure. Number 4, the Georgia Bulldogs finished 8-2 last year, and if there's ever a year for them to win the SEC, this is the year. Alabama has to replace some talent, and Georgia has it. So if there's a year that's going to happen, it feels like this could be the year. Kirby Smart continues to bring talent to Athens to compete, and that includes transfers. Quarterback JT Daniels came in from USC, and once he saw the field, he took the offense to a new level. Georgia didn't lose a game with him as a starter. Running backs will be deep. Pass catchers will also be deep. It's just a matter of who's going to be the go-to guy. They also added Eric Gilbert from LSU as a potential. He was a tight end for LSU, but it's been rumored that he's going to be a wide receiver for Georgia. Speaking of tight ends, Darnell Washington is a unique talent at 6'7", 260 pounds. And with George Pickens most likely out for most of the year, if not all of it, they're going to need guys to step up at wide receiver and catch the ball for Daniels. On defense, this is one of the most talented defenses we'll see. And even though they have a bunch of new guys, it's still going to be one of the best in the entire country. Linebacker Nakobe Dean is back to lead the group. Nolan Smith and Adam Anderson were used more as pass rushers, but they take on new roles, and both of them could be studs this year. They also add West Virginia transfer Tyke Smith at safety, so there's plenty of talent returning on all levels on this defense. So even if new faces coming into the picture, Georgia is going to be one of the best teams in the entire country in 2021. Number 3 is the Oklahoma Sooners. Finished 9-2 last year, and even in a down year, Oklahoma found a way to win the Big 12, which is just dumb. Spencer Rattler struggled early, but he figured out a way to put it all together and have quite a good season. We learned that if Oklahoma's quarterback needs time to prove his worth, it only really takes a few games. After producing 3 first-round picks, Spencer Rattler won the starting job as a freshman and just needed some time to adjust. The offense struggled early, but then towards the end of the season, they couldn't be stopped. Marvin Mims is back to lead the way. Theo Wease is back. Austin Stogner is back at tight end. The biggest addition to this team will be Eric Gray, who's at running back. He joins Kennedy Brooks, who sat out all of last year, to give them 2 of the best running backs in the entire country. The defense is getting a lot better. Nick Bonito is a guy who stepped up big for this team. And then you have guys like Jalen Redmond, who's back. You have Isaiah Thomas up the middle, Perion Winfrey. This defensive line is going to be a problem. Deshaun White is solid at linebacker, and then Delaren Turner-Yell and Pat Fields are back at safety. Oklahoma's defense is where people say it's going to be. This is a national championship team, and Spencer Rattler and the offense will score points. And if Alex Grinch and the defense can find a way to stop teams more frequently, I don't want to see what's going to happen when they face any team this year. Number 2, the Alabama Crimson Tide, the defending national champs, went 13-0, and now they have to replace Mac Jones at quarterback, Najee Harris at running back, Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle at wide receiver. Luckily, when you get talent like they do, you can just pick up and reload. Bryce Young is the favorite to win the quarterback job. He's pretty much all but locked it up. Running back Brian Robinson will be the starter at running back, and he'll have guys behind him that will push him. And John Mechie is back after having a nice year behind both Waddle and Smith. Jaleel Billingsley is a freak at tight end who also returns kicks at 6'4", 230 pounds, so that's terrifying. Speaking of freaks, offensive tackle Evan Neal, 6'7", 360 pounds, has a future in the NFL. Could be the first overall pick if all goes well. So there's not going to be a huge drop-off on that side of the ball. Christian Harris is one of the most versatile players in the entire country, and he's joined by another loaded group. Will Anderson and Christopher Allen were solid, and they added Tennessee transfer Henry To'oTo'o. If you want a better group of linebackers, you're not going to find them outside of Tuscaloosa, honestly. On the backside, Nick Saban's projects, if you want to call them that, or Nick Saban's babies, this is the group that he coaches, and they're going to be good. Josh Jobe and Malachi Moore are names that you'll have to get to know if you don't already, honestly. All eyes are on Bryce Young, though. If he can take this offense to a new level, there's a new coordinator entering the picture in Bill O'Brien. So how he gels with Bryce Young is going to be a big key. And if these playmakers are able to step up, there's no shortage of talent. It's just a matter of can they put it all on the field and can they avoid these struggles that a lot of first-year players produce when they're finally hitting the field. And number one is the Clemson Tigers. Finished 10-2 last year, and losing a talent like Trevor Lawrence would set a program back a year or two, but at Clemson, you just move on. You don't really take a step back. DJ Uiagalelei showed his potential last year when he played against Notre Dame and started one other game. It gives fans a lot of confidence for the future of this offense. A guy with a big arm. Trevor Lawrence was a runner, but he had more speed. DJ's got a lot more power in his frame, and while they don't want him running the ball a ton, tackling him is not going to be fun for any opposing defense. Nice thing for him is that he gets Justin Ross back this year, who sat out all last year with a neck injury, retired at one point, and now is back to give them a deep threat that they sorely need. And there's a lot of talent at wide receiver as well. Lynn J. Dixon finally gets his chance to be the featured back, and he'll be joined by Will Shipley coming in as a freshman, who's another guy who people are just raving about. Even with Darion Kendrick transferring to Georgia, defense is loaded once again. Balen Spector and James Skalski return at linebacker to be the leaders, and the Tigers' defensive line is absolutely loaded. Miles Murphy, Brian Brissy, KJ Henry, Tyler Davis, and Xavier Thomas are all back, one of the deepest groups in the entire country. Dabo Swinney's team is ready to have another great season. They're hoping that this year ends in a national championship, and they're just going to have to hold off some very talented teams. They face Georgia in week 1. That's going to be one of the best games of that week for sure, maybe one of the best games of the season. A loss there doesn't kill them, but it's definitely something they would rather win to strengthen their resume towards the end of the year. So there you have it. College football top 25 heading into the 2021 season. Who do you like? Who do you not like? Who should be higher? Who should be lower? Who's not included that you want included? And give me a reason why. Love to hear what you guys have to think. Season's getting closer and closer as every day goes on, and it's going to be fun to watch this season again. College football can't get here soon enough. Hopefully a normal season, but if anything, college football will be back, and that's really all we need to enjoy our fall.